They are channels for the king's soul to come out of his sarcophagus, through the northern channel, up to the northern sky, and to join the circumpolar stars.
4,000 years ago, the old kingdom of Egypt fell, ending the era of colossal stone pyramids. In the chaotic aftermath, the pyramids were damaged, and their mysteries were forgotten. Mud brick pyramids that followed concealed their layouts to deter thieves. However, amidst these efforts, a crucial secret was overlooked. What secrets lie within the channels of the Great Pyramid? Join us as we unravel the mind-boggling changes that have occurred at the Great Pyramid, and what this transformation means for the world. The puzzle surrounding the Great Pyramid. The standout feature of the Great Pyramid isn't its grand halls or majestic chambers, but rather the unassuming small channels that stem from its upper chambers. Despite their humble appearance, these channels hold a peculiar allure, sparking the imagination to venture beyond the massive stone walls, wondering what secrets lie concealed within. For thousands of years, these channels have teased explorers, leaving scars on the pyramid where attempts were made to unravel their mysteries. Despite countless efforts, ancient and modern, the true purpose of these channels has remained elusive. But now a new era of discovery is dawning. Let us explore the prevailing theories surrounding these channels, presenting fresh evidence to unveil their original intent. Although daunting, the clues have always been present, patiently awaiting discovery. The history of exploration within these channels is a rich narrative of curiosity and innovation. References to these channels date back to as early as 1200 AD, with descriptions hinting at their role in facilitating air and light within the pyramid. Detailed accounts from figures like John Greaves in 1646 offer precise measurements and observations that resonate with what we see today. Notably, Greaves noted, the southern channel's rounded shape and larger size, indicative of earlier damage likely predating written records. Additionally, evidence of soot suggests the past use of these channels for lighting. In 1818, Captain Giovanni Caviglia embarked on an ambitious quest to explore these channels, suspecting they might lead to hidden chambers. His endeavors, including digging a tunnel towards the northern channel, marked significant milestones in the exploration of the pyramid's inner workings. Further expeditions in the 19th century, notably by Howard Vyse and John Shea Perring, continued to shed light on these enigmatic passages. The careful efforts to clear debris and restore airflow within the chambers offer glimpses into the challenges faced by these early explorers. However, just when the mystery seemed solved, with the revelation of the channel's role in ventilation, new complexities arose. Discoveries made by Wayneman Dixon and James Grant highlighted additional closed channels, reigniting intrigue and extending the tale of exploration within the Great Pyramid. The journey through these channels transcends mere physical exploration, symbolizing humanity's eternal quest for understanding and unraveling the mysteries of the past. This area was carefully dug out to uncover a passage in the south wall, leading to the realization that another passage existed in the north wall as well. An article published in Nature on December 26, 1872, documented this significant finding. It noted that while the discovery of these channels, often referred to as Dixon's channels, did not provide a solution to the mystery of the Queen's chamber, it did add to the complexities surrounding it. When these channels were first opened, they revealed 3 ancient artifacts left behind during the construction of the Great Pyramid: a small dolerite ball, a tiny copper hook, and a short piece of cedar wood, collectively known as the Dixon relics. Despite being lost in museums for some time, these artifacts are now all properly cataloged and preserved. Initially, it was thought that the channels from the Queen's chamber would extend outside the pyramid, but subsequent explorations failed to find them. In 1882, Flinders Petrie meticulously measured the channels using a goniometer and even peered down them with a telescope when the sunlight was just right. He aimed to use these channels as reference points for analyzing the original alignment of the pyramid's outer casing stones. However, due to their irregular twists and turns, they proved unsuitable for this purpose. Now, to protect their dead, the pyramid has an intricate network of channels that could confuse even the most learned expert. The complex channels of the Great Pyramid. Employing a clever system of steel rods equipped with flexible joints, Edgar measured the southern channel to its obstruction, finding it to be 63.4 meters long. However, the northern channel presented a greater challenge due to its sharp bends. Edgar managed to probe 53.3 meters before his rods broke. He then made a second attempt with new rods, which also broke at the same distance. Edgar's findings disproved earlier theories, showing that the channels were much longer than previously believed. In particular, Professor George Reisner of Harvard University had theorized that the Queen's Chamber channels were merely dummy air channels, but Edgar's discoveries challenged this notion, underscoring the complexity of unraveling the mysteries of ancient Egyptian architecture. Reisner made a mistake when he assumed that the channels from the Queen's Chamber only extended a short distance into the pyramid. This error highlighted a recurring issue in Egyptology, where researchers sometimes bend the facts to fit their theories. This trend persists today. In his 2007 book on the Great Pyramid, John Romer suggested that the ends of the hidden shafts in the Queen's Chamber were probably sealed with stone blocks, not left open as some claimed. However, there's still a piece of the northern channel left uncut, proving Romer wrong and showing his lack of serious investigation into the mystery. Besides measuring the channels, Edgar also took on the task of clearing the northern channel from the King's Chamber, which had become blocked again over the years. After completing the job, Edgar noted a significant drop in temperature inside the pyramid, making it more comfortable for both workers and visitors. He even built masonry structures at the outer ends of the channels to prevent them from getting blocked again. Edgar's efforts paid off a decade later when he revisited the site in 1938, finding both channels still clear. However, despite the hard work of scholars like Weiss, Paring, Petrie, and Edgar, much of their research on the channels was forgotten or disregarded as the 20th century progressed. Later writers proposed theories like star alignments, suggesting that each channel pointed towards a specific star revered by the ancient Egyptians. However, none of the channels are straight, and their angles vary depending on where you measure them. Additionally, the exit points of the King's Chamber channels have been lost, making it impossible to confirm precise alignments with stars. Considering these factors, the theory of precise star alignment seems unlikely. Instead, a more flexible approach may be needed, acknowledging that the northern channel might have served a different purpose compared to similar passages in other pyramids from the Old Kingdom. While most entrances in ancient constructions are carefully straight, the northern channels of the Great Pyramid stand out for their noticeable bends. This discrepancy raises questions, especially considering that constructing perfectly straight entrances elsewhere was more challenging than building the small channels within the Great Pyramid. If the builders intended for the channels to be straight, they would have made them so. However, the earlier explanation attributing these channels to ventilation was challenged by the discovery of the Queen's Chamber channels, since these channels did not connect to the chamber or the outside of the pyramid. Their purpose as ventilation pathways seemed unlikely. In response to this puzzle, a spiritual explanation gained traction among Egyptologists. Zahi Hawass proposed that the southern shaft symbolized a corridor for the king's soul to journey as the sun god Ra, while the northern shaft represented a similar pathway for the king as the god Horus to ascend to the northern stars. Mark Lehner supported a similar interpretation, suggesting that the channels served as passages for the king's soul to traverse from his sarcophagus through the northern channel towards the northern sky, joining the circumpolar stars. While appealing to those presenting themselves as experts, this soul channel theory gained widespread acceptance in Egyptology, even being endorsed by prominent scholars like Rainer Stadelmann and I.E.S. Edwards. Support for the spiritual interpretation was drawn from pyramid texts centuries later, which referenced connections between the king and celestial bodies like Orion and Sirius. Meanwhile, the Great Pyramid faced a practical problem. Trapped heat and moisture from tourists made the interior uncomfortable and damaged its surfaces. To address this, Zahi Hawass enlisted the help of German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink to develop a robot capable of clearing the king's chamber channels and installing a ventilation system. Although Gantenbrink's primary interest lay in exploring the queen's chamber channels, he completed the air conditioning work in the king's chamber as a prerequisite. By 1992, Gantenbrink's system successfully reduced the Great Pyramid's humidity from 79% to 53% within a day, using only 30% of its capacity. The following year, his robot reached the end of the Queen's Chamber southern channel, revealing copper pins inserted within a blocking stone, sparking excitement among Egyptologists like Mark Lehner, who hailed it as a significant discovery. The intriguing copper pins. The discovery of blocking stones with mysterious copper pins in the Great Pyramid has fascinated scholars, leading to various interpretations of their significance. Zahi Hawass suggested that these stones with copper pins could be considered miniature doors, implying a symbolic or ritualistic purpose. However, Mark Lehner disagreed with this characterization, noting that the openings were too small for anything larger than a small rat to pass through, suggesting that slab might be a more fitting term. Despite their differing views, both Hawass and Lehner emphasized the importance of the copper pins, speculating that they may have had a ritual function related to celestial beliefs, possibly mentioned in later pyramid texts. However, some skepticism remains about these interpretations. While Hawass and Lehner may have deep knowledge of ancient Egyptian spiritual beliefs, the rationale behind a rat-sized passage in the Great Pyramid, as opposed to the human-sized passages in other pyramids, raises questions about the intended symbolism. Without clear evidence or context from the time of construction, the purpose of the copper pins remains speculative. While they hold significance for us today as rare artifacts, they may have been nothing more than practical elements used during construction. For instance, the bent copper pins could have served as handles for sealing the channels intermittently to prevent debris from entering. Additionally, the presence of niches in the King's Chamber southern channel suggests that similar blocking stones could have been utilized there as well. Furthermore, the unfinished nature of the Queen's Chamber channels raises the possibility that the copper pin blocking stones were left in place after the channels were abandoned, serving as remnants of the construction process rather than deliberate symbols or rituals. Overall, while the copper pins add to the intrigue of the Great Pyramid, their exact purpose and significance remain open to interpretation. The copper hook and handle might have been tools used to remove blocking slabs if they were temporarily sealed during construction, but they could also be unrelated items. Determining if any part of a pyramid was left unfinished is tricky, because the quality of craftsmanship can vary widely. However, the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid is widely accepted as unfinished. To assess whether the channels in the Queen's Chamber were left incomplete, we need to closely examine the chamber itself. There are 4 main clues suggesting it was unfinished, ranked from weaker to stronger evidence. Firstly, older reports described the chamber walls as rough and unpolished. However, Flinders Petrie noted that this rough appearance was likely due to crystalline salt growth, which was common in the chamber. Once the salt was removed, the walls appeared to be of standard quality, so this point doesn't hold as evidence. Secondly, the fact that the openings of the channels were initially sealed led some to believe they were unused. However, using this as evidence to argue the chamber's unfinished state would be circular reasoning, so it's not a reliable indicator. Thirdly, the condition of the chamber floor and the passage leading to it is significant. Both surfaces are rough, lacking the smooth, high-quality pavement found in finished chambers. Some suggest that treasure hunters may have destroyed the floor, but this explanation is weak. Even in other pyramids where floors were dug out, traces of the original flooring remain. The Queen's Chamber subfloor shows signs of being built upon, but not in a manner consistent with finished pavement. Petrie concluded that the rough masonry seen in the chamber was originally covered by a layer of smoother material, which was then stripped away to insert the chamber walls. This suggests that the chamber was left unfinished. Moreover, it doesn't make sense that looters would remove the entire horizontal passage floor without further excavation. The missing floor in both the Queen's chamber and the passage likely indicates an unfinished area. In the western corner of the Queen's chamber threshold, there is an extra projection of stone that was never smoothed out. Flinders Petrie notes that this protrusion was intentionally left on both sides of the corner to protect the stone during transportation and construction. While the rest of the chamber's surface was carefully finished, this part remained untouched, with markings indicating where it needed to be dressed later. This unfinished corner is a clear indication of incomplete work, likely due to its fragile and vulnerable nature. What's intriguing is that even in its unfinished state, the stone is meticulously crafted with a reference line to guide the finishing process. This attention to detail sets it apart from other undressed stones, suggesting that leaving it rough was intentional rather than accidental. The design of the Queen's chamber passage, which was meant to be blocked off, is another unusual feature not found in other pyramids. Deciphering the purpose of the Queen's chamber. The anomaly in the Queen's chamber design lacks a clear explanation, adding to the mystery surrounding the chamber and its channels. Considering the possibility that the Queen's chamber was left incomplete supports the theory that the King's chamber channels were intended for ventilation. Despite arguments against this theory based on the channel's design, historical evidence shows that they effectively conducted air when cleared. The channel's upward angle, rather than being entirely horizontal, actually optimizes airflow by providing the shortest path to the pyramid's edge. The varying angles of inclination of the channels can be explained by the King's chamber's off-center position from the pyramid's axis, ensuring that both channels still lead efficiently to the pyramid's edge. While the lateral bends in the channels may slightly reduce airflow, this seems insignificant compared to the complexity of alternative explanations, such as the pharaoh's soul journeying to the circumpolar stars. The placement of the channels within the pyramid chambers appears to be well suited for ventilation purposes. If they were positioned near the ceiling, it would complicate the construction of the roof and make them more susceptible to lateral pressure from the vaults. However, the lowest joints in the Queen's chamber channels are constructed differently, possibly to withstand this additional lateral force. Another reason for placing the channels at a height could be practicality. Egyptians might have preferred them at a height where they could easily hang lamps or inspect for any debris that might intrude. Studies have shown that the channels were capable of transporting a significant amount of air, indicating that they were indeed designed for ventilation. Examining the architecture of the channel blocks provides further insight into their purpose. Except for where the channels bend or open, they consist of two stones fitted together in the same manner. The walls and ceiling are made from a single stone cut into a U shape and then inverted, with this upside-down U set on top of a flat stone forming the floor. This design ensures stability and prevents misalignment. Interestingly, similar U-shaped stones are found in other pyramid complexes, where they were used to channel water away from buildings. It's possible that the Egyptians repurposed this design concept for air ventilation, following the principle of as above, so below. However, for those who believe in a soul-sized channel, the inspiration might instead be drawn from sewer drains. In summary, while the channels represent a unique feature of pyramid architecture, their design and placement suggest a practical purpose, whether it be for air ventilation or inspired by ancient water management techniques. The channels inside the pyramid have indeed been effective in regulating the climate, but there's a major issue with this explanation. It's unclear why a burial chamber within a pyramid would need ventilation in the first place. Unlike other pyramids, the entrance to the Great Pyramid is below its chambers, leading to a buildup of smoke, heat, and condensation that doesn't dissipate quickly. This discomfort was even evident when Zahi Hawass was seen sweating on live TV within the chambers due to the heat emitted by lamps. However, ancient Egyptian workers endured even harsher conditions in areas like the well shaft, subterranean chamber, and extensive tunnels beneath Djoser's pyramid. Additionally, most of the work on the king and queen's chambers would have been completed before they were sealed with restricted airflow. This lack of a clear explanation for ventilation makes it an unsatisfactory answer for many researchers. Another way to gauge the importance of stonework to ancient Egyptians is by examining the quality of the finish on the stones. Flinders Petrie pioneered this method, and it remains a valuable tool for analysis. Recent explorations using robots have revealed irregular workmanship inside the channels, suggesting they may not have been considered very important. Moreover, considering the purpose of the channels, ideas beyond ventilation and spiritual beliefs have been proposed, such as channels for communication or for magical waters to flow into the pyramid. However, these speculations only add to the mystery. The crux of the mystery lies in whether the channels were open or closed. Closed channels wouldn't serve a practical purpose, while open channels wouldn't align with a spiritual explanation. Determining which scenario applies could help resolve the debate. Unlike other pyramids that can be compared for context, the Great Pyramid's channels stand alone. Nevertheless, we're fortunate to have 4 separate channels, each with distinct characteristics that can be compared to each other. By carefully analyzing these channels, we may finally reveal the answers we seek. So, let's take a deep breath and dive in, uncovering the vanishing block. Let's rewind to 1837, a crucial moment when John Shea Perring was tackling the task of clearing the King's Chamber southern channel after successfully unplugging the northern one. The northern channel, being the longest and least inclined, posed a daunting challenge. Anticipating a similar difficulty in the south, Perring arranged for J.R. Hill to blast the pyramid around the channel, creating a stable platform for heavy equipment. In preparation for this endeavor, Perring or Hill deemed it necessary to remove the highest remaining block that formed part of the southern channel. Though it's not explicitly stated in historical records, the block vanished after their work, leaving behind a mystery. Perring, understanding the significance of this missing piece, meticulously documented it with sketches and notes. He described how the block curved downward horizontally, likely to prevent sand from blocking it. In 1837, the prevailing assumption was that the channels served as conduits for air circulation. However, Perring, renowned for his thoroughness, left no stone unturned in his documentation of the pyramids. His attention to detail set him apart as one of the most exceptional researchers in this field. Despite some ambiguity in his drawings, Perring's insight into the channel's design was unparalleled. While subsequent researchers may have overlooked Perring's analysis, his meticulous observations cannot be easily dismissed. Maragioglio and Rinaldi, for instance, acknowledged ventilation as a probable function for the channels, but made interpretations that diverged from Perring's findings. Yet Perring's meticulous examination of the block suggests that he may have been onto something significant. Academic Egyptology hasn't always embraced Perring's contributions due to his position predating the formal discipline. Nonetheless, recent excavations, such as Mohammed Ismail Khaled's work on Sahura's pyramid, have validated Perring's observations. Despite this, modern researchers like Khaled are often bound by earlier plans, such as those of Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt, which may lack the depth and accuracy of Perring's insights. Certainly, we have to follow the accepted route, which is Borchardt's plan. Khaled deserves commendation for his honesty regarding Perring's work, alongside his remarkable discoveries at Sahura's pyramid. Perring stands as the sole witness to the southern channel curving horizontally, yet many Egyptologists have chosen to overlook this detail simply because it wasn't documented by anyone else. Similarly, John Romer's misinterpretation of the Queen's Chamber channel openings adds to the confusion. Understanding that the King's Chamber channels leveled out horizontally is crucial evidence suggesting that they extended through the casing stones. This detail rebuffs many objections to the ventilation theory. Critics argue that open-air channels would allow rainwater, wind-blown sand, and bats to enter. However, basic engineering principles could easily reduce these concerns, such as installing protective covers over the openings and designing the channels to prevent sand accumulation. Moreover, there's no evidence of bats inhabiting the channels, and any unforeseen issues could have been addressed by climbing the pyramid to seal or unseal the channels as needed. Moving on to the Queen's Chamber, let's examine the chamber openings of the channels. Decoding pyramid's hidden designs. The southern channel was excavated from the top of a wall stone and then sealed with another block on top, leaving only a small portion of the wall intact. Dixon, upon discovering this channel, attempted to locate a corresponding one on the north wall but slightly misjudged its position. The true location of the northern channel carved into the corners of two wall blocks has often been misrepresented in photographs and literature. This oversight raises questions about why the builders didn't simply carve out a corner of one block instead of constructing a separate wall for the channels. Unlike the channels elsewhere in the pyramid, the precise alignment of the Queen's Chamber channels suggests they were intentionally oriented toward each other within the chambers. The pyramid is admired for its symmetry, but beneath the surface, the channels were not meticulously crafted. It's logical to assume that the Queen's Chamber channels were aligned because they were meant to be visible, yet they remained unfinished, much like the chamber itself. While the King's Chamber channels initially mirror the room's rectangular shape, they transition to a square size similar to that of the Queen's Chamber channels as they ascend. The design of the channels where they open into a chamber was carefully considered by the builders. However, this evidence is still open to interpretation and may not fully resolve the matter. In our modern age, advanced technologies have unveiled many secrets of the pyramids, but the ultimate clue to solve this mystery won't come from lasers, drones, or other high-tech methods. Instead, it requires the oldest form of archaeology pioneered by Weiss, Paring, and Petrie. In a structure as vast as the Great Pyramid, identifying what to focus on is the greatest challenge. We must direct our attention to the opening of the King's Chamber northern channel. Although one wouldn't typically expect to find significant clues in such a location, there's an inherent optimism that any problem can be solved with the right approach. Clearing our minds of assumptions, we observe the stones meticulously. Beneath the debris and dust, the construction of the channel appears somewhat chaotic. The eastern block shows evidence of sawing in the upper wall, while a tubular drill formed the bottom corner. In contrast, the western wall lacks smoothness, but the bottom corner is precisely squared off by a saw cut in half of the floor. This observation is intriguing in itself, revealing that the builders worked on the two stones differently, based on their tools and limitations at the time. The visible changes in saw marks on the wall suggest that the block may have been cut in multiple stages. The sharp line of the saw cut comes to an end, giving way to the rounded corner created by a tubular drill in the first 25 centimeters of the channel. However, the channel opening itself does not feature a rounded corner. Instead, the first centimeter or two of the channel's western corner was squared off with a straight cut. This discovery is similar to a hidden treasure left behind by the Great Pyramid for us to uncover. While interpreting tool marks on stone can sometimes feel like interpreting tea leaves, in this case, we have a compelling indication. Why would the builders use a completely different cutting method for the opening to the northern channel? The conclusion you may have already drawn is that the openings were originally sealed within the chamber and then cut open during the final stages of construction. However, the exact process remains unclear, and there are some straight saw cuts on the floor adjacent to the tubular drill. It's possible that the builders left the channel partially cut to provide themselves with a reference line and save some effort later. What's truly remarkable is that the inner saw, cut on the western floor, does not overlap with the tubular drill at all. Moreover, it cuts deeper into the wall than the tubular drill. This indicates a clear sequence of cuts in the western corner of the channel: cut 1, cut 2, and cut 3. The third and final straight cut is particularly fascinating because it demonstrates that the builders aimed for a neatly squared channel opening without rounded corners at the bottom. Although the eastern side is too damaged to observe this effect, it likely received a similarly sharpened corner. Despite having compelling evidence, the thirst for knowledge about the Great Pyramid was far from quenched. When visiting Egypt last year, a deliberate effort was made to take time and adjust the lighting to examine the eastern wall closely. Surprisingly, it was noticed that the polish on the wall changed precisely at the point where the tubular drill ended. Additionally, the tube drilling in the eastern corner seemed smaller before reaching the spot where the saw cut began on the western floor. This observation led to speculation that a slightly smaller tubular drill might have been used for the final cut. Every surface of the blocks forming the bottom of this channel seemed as if they were originally sealed off. This discovery allowed for a direct comparison between the channels in the King's Chamber and Queen's Chamber, finished versus unfinished. The reason for keeping the channels sealed until the final stage of construction may be attributed to what Petrie observed on the Queen's Chamber floor. The chambers were likely filled with masonry and sand to support the ceilings during construction, and then emptied once the heavy work was complete. By keeping the channels sealed, they could prevent them from getting clogged or damaged during the construction process. Now, with a complete understanding of the channels, a confident assertion can be made that their purpose was for ventilation, as they were opened during the final stages.
Blueprints in the desert floor. The machine behind this wasn't some office desktop. It was one of the most advanced chips ever made, built by a company known for building the web we use every day. But this time, it wasn't searching the internet. It was tuned into energy coming from under the desert. Not loose waves or background fuzz, but tight, clean patterns, repeating, intentional. And it matched up with a whole different kind of scan taken from the ground. What it revealed next would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Earth beneath our feet. That ground scan used radar designed to see deep below the surface. What showed up wasn't a bunch of broken stone, it was a hidden world. A long underground network stretching more than 1 mile beneath the sand. This system ran straight under all 3 of the biggest pyramids at Giza. Inside this buried maze were massive cube rooms, spiral walkways, deep narrow wells, one after another. Some of these dropped nearly 700 yards into the earth. Now picture this, 8 wells, each one twisting downward like a giant screw. At the bottom, square rooms as big as city buildings, rooms that no one alive today has seen. Not carved like a cave, built, engineered, not just by hand but by a plan. Everything aligned perfectly with the pyramids above. These shapes don't match what you'd expect from tombs. No carvings of kings, no stacked jars or statues. These aren't places to rest. They look more like parts of a giant device. Even the way they were dug down, that spiral design, is something engineers use now to handle power and movement. It keeps things flowing evenly. Meanwhile, the chip picked up on energy moving through the same areas the radar scanned. Not random zaps or shaking like what you get from the Earth. These were steady signals, energy flows shaped like something made them. They showed up clearly, like wires humming underground. Some folks who study old stuff rolled their eyes. They said it was just the Earth doing what it always does. Nothing special, but others took a second look. A few researchers said it didn't feel like natural energy at all. It was too sharp, too steady, like something built to do a job. One expert who worked with the chip said these machines could find tiny bits of energy no regular tool could. And what they found in Giza wasn't noise. It was structure, pattern. Not messy like wind or heat, more like something still running, even if no one knew it was there. Radar scans showed more than just shape. They revealed 5 underground levels, each one matched up with the next. Walkways connected them all. Nothing out of place, like a grid buried beneath the sand. Not rough tunnels or natural caves. Everything had straight lines and clean angles, like a hidden map. And then there were the numbers. Some blocks from the original pyramid above weighed more than 80 tons. They were stacked tight, edges so close you couldn't fit a piece of paper between them. lined up nearly perfectly with the directions of the Earth, not off by even a little. For decades, the story went that ancient workers dragged heavy rocks on ramps, pulled them mile after mile. But even with modern machines, we can barely match what those builders did. And here we are, finding deep wells and rooms hidden beneath that same site. That's not a side project. That was the real thing. An engineer who looked at the new scans said it reminded him of a theory from years ago, one that claimed the pyramid was not just a grave, but a kind of power machine, a place that could take energy from the ground and push it upward, maybe even send it across space without wires. Now with these deep rooms and sharp energy lines, those old ideas don't sound so wild. Some say the pyramid might have been part of a much bigger setup, a full energy system buried under the sand, one that might have powered machines, lights, or even cities. And yet, when teams try to get down there, they get blocked. For decades now, crews have asked to dig deeper, scan more, drill into the wells, but they keep getting turned down. One team found a tunnel in the year 2023. It was there for a minute, then locked up again. A few people say it's about keeping the site safe. That digging could ruin something, but others think there's more to it. Maybe someone already checked it out. Maybe they found something and never told. Online, theories are flying. Some say an ancient group built all this long before the pharaohs, a group we don't know yet. Others take it further, talking about builders not from this world. After all, the energy shapes below match what we use today in machines. In the cube rooms, no sign they were for burials. The measurements match up with stuff we use now. The tunnel spirals look like modern energy tunnels. The chamber sizes match power storage systems. And the energy patterns? They're too clean to be from nature. In the middle of all this is one fact: the chip keeps picking up the same signals, same depth, same strength. No one has turned it off. No one knows where it comes from. And every time someone asks to go deeper, they get stopped. This underground setup could have been part of something way bigger. Not just a building, a network. Maybe it connected to other sites we haven't even looked at yet. Maybe it was one piece in a system that spread far beyond Egypt. None of it fits the old story. And still, the digging doesn't happen. Crews wait, gear is ready, scans keep rolling in. But access stays closed. Some say we're looking at a power plant older than anything we know. Others think it's a system that still runs. Whatever the answer is, the parts are all there. Buried under tons of sand, clean shapes, clear lines, deep wells, energy that doesn't fade. Right when the clues under Egypt hit a wall, a frozen land on the other side of the world starts raising eyebrows. Secrets, 3 miles under ice. Something's weird about Antarctica. People are buzzing about it, like it's the next big secret everyone suddenly wants to know. It's cold, sure, and full of ice. But there's a lot more going on down there than penguins and snow. A guy, no name, no details, went there. Said it was wild. The mountains, not just hills with snow. He said they looked sharp, like pyramids. All 4 sides lined up way too perfectly. Not natural. Way more mountains than you'd expect. Most folks imagine it as a flat, icy sheet because that's what we've been shown on maps. But go look at some old maps, the ones made before satellites. Some of them show coastlines and mountain ranges way too accurate for their time. How would they know that unless they saw it without ice? There's this one map that gets brought up a lot. It's old, drawn long before we had planes or satellites. But it shows Antarctica with no ice, just land in detail that's oddly on point. Makes you wonder, who saw it like that? And when? Now here's the real kicker. All the countries that have land claims there, they made a deal, a real one. No one's allowed to drill, dig, or pull anything valuable out of the ground. Zero mining. Which is odd, right? It's a frozen desert full of untouched land, and nobody wants to dig? Someone told him a scientist there once said the next world war won't happen over oil or money, but over someone breaking that Antarctica deal. That's how big of a deal it is. Some say there's something buried under the ice, like 3 miles deep. Could be anything. Ancient stuff. Maybe even from a time before people were supposed to exist. Way back, scientists found signs that the place used to be a rainforest. Not a snowy wasteland, but green, full of life, trees, animals. That was like 90 million years ago, they say. not yesterday. Still, the fact that there are plant fossils down there, that means it wasn't always frozen. The question is, was it green when humans were around? Our kind only showed up maybe 6 million years ago. If you stick with what the usual science says, that rainforest was long gone by the time we walked upright. Still, some folks like that one writer from the 1990s thought maybe, just maybe, there was a big twist. He thought the whole crust of the Earth, like the shell on an orange, might have moved. Not the inside, just the skin. Like if the ground we walk on shifted all over, dragging continents into new spots. Crazy? Maybe. But if that happened, Antarctica could have been closer to the equator once. Warm, sunny, full of life. And then one shift, and boom, it's a freezer. Most scientists don't buy it. They say Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years, and that theory is not worth the time. Still, other researchers kept poking around. One guy even said a comet hitting Earth at just the right angle could shake things up enough to move the crust. Not likely, but possible. Eventually, that crust idea got tossed aside by the guy who first loved it. He found a new obsession. A time about 12,800 years ago. Something massive happened then, a huge shift. The weather went nuts. Earth had been warming, melting the big ice sheets a bit. Then all of a sudden, deep freeze, like hitting a switch. Temperatures dropped fast, as cold as the worst of the Ice Age. But here's the weird part. Sea levels rose, fast. That doesn't make sense. If things are freezing, where's the water coming from? Meltwater should be staying frozen. But it didn't. Some think the answer is in the sky. Comets again. Not one, maybe a few. They hit the ice sheets in North America and Europe. Big hits, like slamming hot metal into a frozen pond. It blasts out water, melts tons of ice, floods the oceans, and maybe breaks the warm water current that keeps Earth's climate balanced. Cut that, and the planet freezes. Later, it flips again. After about 1,200 years of freeze, it heats up fast. Super fast. 10 degrees warmer worldwide in just a few hundred years. Glaciers collapse, oceans swell, sea levels rise again. Some say a second comet nailed the ocean itself. The splash sends water vapor high up, traps heat, and boom, greenhouse effect. That time frame from the freeze to the thaw was deadly. Giant animals? Gone. Saber-toothed cats, woolly mammoths, sloths the size of cars, all wiped out. That window between the freeze and the flood? That's the real mystery. There's this giant wall of rock art in South America, over 5 miles long, and it shows all those animals, the extinct ones, dated to that exact 12,800 years ago. Coincidence? Then there's this other place, Turkey. A strange temple, buried for ages. It was built right after the Earth warmed again, right around 11,600 years ago. Same time a Greek story said a city called Atlantis sank into the sea. That number keeps popping up. People bring up Atlantis and the experts roll their eyes. Use that word and it's like hitting a trap door. Everything you've ever done, no matter how careful, gets tossed out. Even if you spent 30 years studying ruins or diving off coastlines. Say that word and they treat you like a joke. Still, that 12,000-year window? It's real. It's wild. Something shook the planet hard. Something messed with the climate, killed off the giants and raised the oceans. Could be comets, could be solar flares. Nobody really agrees. At the end of that ice crash, when things started warming again, the oceans rose like crazy. One burst of water, fast and heavy. That much melt all at once? It had to come from something big. Some say it was the sun. Some say another space rock. If it hit the ocean, the steam would rise up, trap heat, and bake the planet. Sudden cold, then sudden heat. Earth doesn't do that often. Whatever happened, it hit hard and fast. Animals didn't stand a chance. Forests changed. People had to start over. Antarctica? It stayed frozen through it all. Quiet, still, covered in ice. But what if something is under that ice? Something from before the freeze? Something that saw it all happen and got buried, locked away for thousands of years? They don't let anyone dig. They don't let anyone search for old things under the ice. Every country agreed. Nothing gets pulled from the ground. No gold, no metals, no ruins, nothing. 3 miles of ice, locked, silent, guarded by treaties. And just when you think it couldn't get colder, someone says they walked into something down there that shouldn't exist. The green glow beneath the snow, Antarctica, freezing, quiet, and hiding more than penguins. This place is no joke. Almost the whole thing is just one huge ice block. Not just thick, we're talking 3 miles deep in spots. That's enough to bury a mountain the size of Mount Fuji, and no one would even know it was there. Most days down there, cold doesn't cut it. It gets colder than minus 50 degrees. And winds try 200 miles an hour. It's not made for people. Barely 4,000 folks stay there during the busy season. Scientists, sure, but not just them. All tucked away in a place that barely gets a whisper in the news. Maps from hundreds of years ago warn people off with notes like, "Here be monsters." The only place left on Earth where that kind of warning might still be true? Right here, Antarctica. It's out of reach, out of sight, and very much off limits. Even now, after over 200 years of knowing this land exists, scientists are still scratching their heads. That ice is so deep, nobody really sees what's under it. That gives cover for more than just rocks. There are whispers, the kind that say what's buried under all that ice might not even be from Earth. Some people think there's way more going on than just science and snow. They talk about Antarctica like it's hiding something. Huge structures, strange heat signatures, maybe even tech that doesn't match anything we know. Stories have floated around for decades. One stands out. In the middle of 2018, a woman interviewed a man who said he used to be part of a special Navy team. He refused to give his real name, just went by Spartan 1. He talked about a mission in August of 2003. His group flew to the southeast part of Antarctica. The official word? Research. But behind the scenes, they were tracking down someone and grabbing some information. He described a giant shape sticking out of the snow. It had 8 sides and looked way out of place. Only 18 feet showed above the ice. The rest was buried deep. The doors? Thick, between 18 and 30 feet across. But you could push them open with one finger. Inside the place? Total change. Outside, it was 40 below zero. Inside, it felt like a cozy room, around 70 degrees. No heaters, no lights plugged in, just a glow. Lime green light, soft and steady, but no clear source. It came from the walls themselves. He said the inside walls were lined with strange symbols, not like anything he'd ever seen. Not letters, not shapes from any known writing. Just strange, sharp markings carved deep into the walls. People have guessed there might be more under the ice. Whole cities, maybe. Stone halls, strange tools, or even frozen bodies. Things that might have been here long before humans. Antarctica might be the coldest place on Earth, but stories like this keep it burning with questions. What if Antarctica is hiding proof of a forgotten civilization? Smash that like button, drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.